The Dallas Cowboys are 3-3 on the year after a 47-9 loss to the Detroit Lions in Week 6, and they are in a very difficult situation. They were absolutely manhandled in this game from start to finish, as Detroit had nearly 500 yards of offense, while the Cowboys had the least amount of yards they've had in a game all season, and the least amount in a game they've had since a loss to Buffalo in Week 15 of 2023. They committed 5 turnovers offensively, and quarterback Dak Prescott threw 2 interceptions while completing just 51% of his passes. You can say what you want about the Cowboys, whether they're an okay team, or even a good team that had a bad day, or whatever the case may be, but the Lions game summarized why the Dallas Cowboys are in a bad situation. I know the Cowboys had several defensive starters out in this game, and that is definitely worth noting, but this game magnified the problems they have, and the problems they will continue to have throughout the rest of the 2024 season, and what I would expect well into the 2025 season too. And in today's video, we're going to break down why the Dallas Cowboys are in a bad situation, and there is a lot to dive into in today's video, and without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video by discussing what some of the biggest problems for the Cowboys are, and the first is the defense. There was a tweet from Todd Archer of ESPN that said the Cowboys have allowed 167 points in their last 4 home games, including the regular season and playoffs, which is the third most ever over a 4-game span at home in NFL history. I know a lot of people like to point to Dak when the Cowboys lay an egg and point to his contract, especially now that he signed a 4-year, $240 million contract, which put him an average annual value of $60 million per year. And there is naturally going to be criticism with that type of contract, and I get it, but Dak a lot of the time isn't the problem. He is a part of it, yes, but you can't sit here and honestly blame Dak for a lot of these problems that he has no control over. This dates back to the Packers playoff game last year, and even before that, there were signs that this team was starting to crack. The Packers playoff game was a nightmare as they were down 27-7 at half, and within that first half, Dak threw not 1 but 2 interceptions. One of the interceptions was a pick 6, and the other gave Green Bay the ball in the red zone to start a drive. Dallas's next game was against the Browns in Week 1 of the following year, and they won by double digits. And at this point, I wasn't sold on the Cowboys being a great team by any means, but I thought they could win 10 or 11 games and maybe win a wildcard round playoff game and go from there. But the New Orleans game in Week 2 was an embarrassing loss, as New Orleans went into Dallas and put up 35 points in the first half, and eventually won 44-19. And since then, the Saints are 0-4 and have put up just 76 points in the ensuing 4 games. My problem with Dallas entering the 2024 season was that this team was going to have a high floor, but they weren't going to be able to beat any premier teams when it mattered. And I released the Dallas Cowboys 2024 team preview with the title of "This is not the Dallas Cowboys year," because they are a very flawed football team. But I underestimated how flawed they are. I knew the run game was always going to be a problem, and it has been through the first 6 weeks. They are dead last in rushing yards as a team and dead last in yards per carry, and whenever you have a flaw like this that everyone knows about and that everyone knew about entering the year, you better be good everywhere else, and they haven't been, not even close. Not only are they bad running the football offensively, but they are also pretty bad against the run defensively. They're bottom 10 in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns allowed, and this is a little skewed, and I will acknowledge that because they allowed over 270 yards rushing against the Ravens back in Week 3, while only allowing 26 rushing yards to the Giants in Week 4, but the point is, good teams are going to be able to run the football against Dallas. Both Baltimore and Detroit showed that, and New Orleans did too back in Week 2. And the reality for Baltimore and Detroit is they're bigger, faster, and stronger than Dallas on the offensive side of the football, and it shows. And a lot of NFL players are in the league due to a combination of how they take care of themselves both physically and nutritionally. And the NFL was never going to be in the cards for me. I'm 5'10", maybe 5'11", about $165, and I was never going to be able to go out and cover somebody like DK Metcalf. But I can still take care of myself both physically and nutritionally. And I can also take care of myself through today's sponsor, Groons. Groons are a convenient, comprehensive formula packed into 8 gummies a day, and what you need to know is it's not a greens gummy, it's not a probiotic, it's not a multivitamin. It's all of that and then some, for a fraction of the price, and a bonus, they taste great. 8 gummies are included within each daily snack pack because you can't include the amount of nutrients Groons has into just one gummy. Generic multivitamins have around 7 to 9 vitamins, while Groons has 20 plus vitamins and minerals and 60 plus whole whole food ingredients. Gruen says gut health, energy, beauty, immunitive, and cognitive recovery benefits through the daily snack pack, and with 20 plus vitamins, it's never a bad time to get caught up with the cold weather around the corner. And you can get 45% off Gruen's through the link in the description. And once again, that's 45% off at Gruen's through the link in the description. Now, when you have the double whammy of good teams being able to run the football on you and not being able to stop it, while also not being able to run the ball to try and milk some of the clock and allow your defense to be able to rest a little bit, you are setting yourself up for failure. And as simple as the concept of running the football and playing good defense is, it's amazing how many teams do not prioritize this, with Dallas being one of them. We are 6 games into the season, and their leading rusher is Rico Dowdle, who is averaging 41 rushing yards per game. For whatever reason, they chose to bring back Ezekiel Elliott at age 29, and in 6 games, he has 115 rushing yards on 38 rushing attempts. Zeke is averaging just 3 yards per carry, and out of those 38 carries, the longest run he's had on the year is a measly 9 yards. And even within that, the longest run for the Cowboys in 2024 is a 13-yard run by Rico Dowdle. The Cowboys also have problems along the offensive line, and I don't think it should be a surprise that they've struggled in the early parts of the season. Tyler Guyton was the 8th offensive tackle off the board in the first 29 picks, and I think Guyton will be a fine player in the long run, but he struggled at times during his rookie season, which should have been expected. Guyton did miss the Lions game in Week 6, which forced Tyler Smith to kick out to left tackle and have guard TJ Bass play left guard for the game, but even when Guyton has played in 2024, he has shown flashes of both good and bad, and again, that should have been expected as a rookie tackle making the transition from right tackle to left tackle, and while also being the 8th tackle drafted in the 2024 draft class. I don't think it should be a surprise Dallas is struggling as much as they are, and I know a lot of Cowboys fans are mentally checked out of this season because Jerry, the general manager, has done a terrible job in terms of putting a competitive team on the field. Yes, they have good players like Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, and Dak, but those 3 players do not make an entire team. And we heard all offseason that the Cowboys were going to be all in this year, and they didn't do much in free agency, aside from bringing in linebacker Eric Kendricks, and of course, bringing back a dinosaur in 2024 Ezekiel Elliott. One of the biggest problems the Cowboys have that's not going away anytime soon is owner/general manager Jerry Jones. Jerry did an interview this week with 105.3 The Fan, which is a radio station based in Dallas, and I'm paraphrasing here, but one of the hosts of the show asked Jerry about how the free agency is working out for him this year, and the fact that they said they were going all in, and how is that playing out. And Jerry basically said that he doesn't have to answer those questions from him, and he doesn't have to explain every single decision that he's made, and that the interviewer was not allowed to ask those types of questions, or that he shouldn't be asking those types of questions, and that if he continues to, that Jerry can basically find someone else to ask him those types of questions. And Jerry kind of also insulted the interviewer and said that if you know what you're doing, that we're here in the league meetings in Atlanta, and that everybody would be looking to hire you. So there's a lot wrong with that to begin with. To insult an interviewer and to basically say you are not allowed to criticize any decision I make, first off, is not a good look. Second off, I would also say it's morally wrong to not be subject to any sort of criticism when your team is not good, and when your team is also coming off of a 38-point loss, and also on top of it, it comes off like old man yelling at the clouds like the Simpsons meme, and that's not good. And I think that's another big problem the Cowboys have, is that Jerry Jones also knows he's not doing a good job, and that Jerry is not going to hire a general manager and put his ego aside. So we have all sorts of problems with the Cowboys. We have a quarterback who I don't think is top 5 or top 6, and sure, there's games where Dak plays at a top 5 or top 6 level, but do we really think Dak is going to win 4 straight postseason games to win a Super Bowl for Dallas? Because I personally don't. And on top of it, they have a Hall of Fame guard retiring soon in Zach Martin, and that's going to be another position to replace, along an offensive line that's already had problems to start the year. And then the defense has a lot of problems in itself. Corner depth was a concern I had heading into the season, and unfortunately, Deron Bland hasn't played a snap in 2024 yet, so that is the unfortunate part of the NFL, and I don't want to victory lap an injury. That's not what I'm trying to say, as much as I would have rather had Dallas prioritized bringing in more corners and bringing in guys to be able to be a quality depth player, which unfortunately they didn't really do. They traded Nashawn Wright to the Vikings for corner Andrew Booth, and Andrew Booth's most notable play for the Cowboys so far is getting absolutely toasted by Malik Neighbors on Thursday Night Football for everyone in the country to see. They brought in Kalen Carson in the 5th round, and I liked Kalen as a prospect. He was a good corner coming out of Wake Forest, but do we really think a 5th round corner is going to be able to be a CB2 right out of the gate? And sure, there's been some corners that have been able to do that in past years, but that is by far an exception and not the standard. So I didn't really like what Dallas did this offseason to try and replace some of those holes that they very clearly had. And obviously I didn't like Jerry going after a radio host who was simply asking him what was a valid question. Now, Jerry going after a guy's job or saying that he can, basically alluding to the fact that he is a billionaire and that he could essentially get him fired if he put a word into the station, is morally wrong on so many levels. But that goes to show where the Cowboys organization is, because we are basically all under Jerry's ruling, and we are basically yes men to Jerry, and the results have spoken for themselves. Dallas right now is the only team. Even Kansas City didn't do this last year, by the way. They're the only team to have 3 straight 12-win seasons, and they only have 1 playoff win over the past 3 years, which was against a 2022 Bucs team that finished with a losing record. So there's a lot of problems in Dallas, and for me, when I say it starts with the top down, it's not really a head coach. It starts with the owner. The owner doesn't want to take accountability, and his way of taking accountability is getting hostile, which is, again, a major problem. And the Cowboys are not in a good situation. And they're also not in a good situation because now they have another emerging team in their division in the Washington Commanders. The Washington Commanders having the start to the season they had, to me, only adds pressure to the Cowboys because Washington wasn't supposed to be a great team this year, and they've looked really, really good offensively. Now, just being honest, I think with the Commanders' defense and with the limitations they have on the roster, especially with Jonathan Allen recently tearing his pec and him being out for the year, I don't think the Commanders are going to win multiple playoff games this year, and I think it would be a very big deal for them to get to the postseason this year, which I do think is possible. And that, to me, only adds pressure to the Cowboys to basically say to Jerry, look, this team had the number 2 overall pick last year, and they went from the number 2 pick to potentially the postseason. And Dallas right now at 3-3 is in a very bad situation as they enter their Week 7 bye, because their schedule off their bye is very, very difficult. They play at San Francisco, at Atlanta, and then home against the Eagles, Texans, and those games might be switched, and then at the Washington Commanders. 5 straight games off the bye. 3 of them are on the road, which are at San Francisco, at Atlanta, and at Washington. Believe it or not, I don't think Dallas is going to win 3 of those 5 games. So through 11 games, I think at best they're going to be 5-6. And this is also going to present a problem for the Cowboys, not just in 2024, but for the ensuing 3 or 4 years, because Dak Prescott, whatever you think of him, and I know a lot of NFC East fans like to hate watch Dak, and they really got a kick out of the wild card round of the playoffs last year. But Dak Prescott is a really solid quarterback, and he has a very high floor as a quarterback. Yes, there's times where he doesn't quite live up to that floor, and there's times where he will certainly, stat pad, if you will. And there was a funny tweet from Skip Bayless that said, Dak is the master of the garbage yard, meaning that the game is way out of reach, but Dak will pad his stats, and the Packers game last year was a prime example of that. But the point is, Dak is going to beat up on bad teams, and the Cowboys are probably not going to have a top 5, 6, or 7 pick in the next couple of years, and that's due in large part to having Dak Prescott as their quarterback. So when you think about what the Cowboys' outlook is, and when you think about their long-term outlook, I'll be honest, I don't think Dak Prescott is ever going to lead this team to a Super Bowl. I think there's going to be a lot that has to happen, and there's going to be several dominoes in one postseason to fall just for them to have the chance. I mean, guys, we are now in year 9 of Dak Prescott's career, and we haven't been to the NFC Championship game, and he has a lifetime postseason record of just 2-5. And the numbers last year, yes, he threw for a lot of yards in that game, but we all obviously know that they were inflated. So when you look at the Cowboys' future, they're not going to be bad enough to have a good draft pick, or at least a great draft pick, and it's not every year where a Micah Parsons falls into your lap at number 11 overall, or a CeeDee Lamb falls into your lap at number 17 overall, which were great draft picks, by the way, by Jerry Jones, and they were great value picks, although I think you can argue that neither player should have been there, although credit where it's due. You had to go draft those guys when they were in front of you, so credit for making it happen. But when you look at the Cowboys' future, what are they going to do? To me, it's going to be a lot of 6-11, 8-9, 9-8. They might have an 11-6 year. They're certainly not going to have a fourth straight 12-win season this year. And at what cost? And the reality is that cost is going to be a $240 million contract for Dak to be the guy, and he's never going to be able to be the guy due in some part to him not playing up in big games, and also the defense continuously letting them down. And Mike Zimmer, to me, so far has been an absolute disaster. They've allowed over 400 yards in 3 of the 6 games, and I think that's going to continue. The games they did not allow 400 yards were, you guessed it, against the Browns, who are in one of the worst situations in football, the Giants, who are quarterbacked by Daniel Jones, and the Steelers, who were quarterbacked by Justin Fields. So congratulations on not allowing 400 yards to those quarterbacks, but when you face the cream of the crop, and when you face San Francisco, Atlanta, Philly, Houston, and Washington off of your Week 7 bye, your work is more than cut out for you. And again, if you want to cherry pick and say that the Cowboys starters were out against the Lions, guys, does that really matter? I mean, yes, you can say they might not have won 47-9 and that they might have won 27-10 or 27-13, but just thinking out loud, does it really matter if they would have lost by 14 points, or even at best if they lost by a touchdown to the Lions? No. The Lions, to me, are the premier NFC team, and they absolutely throttled Dallas. And that's what's going to happen when Dallas faces these premier teams. Maybe they beat one of them. Maybe they go 1-4. Maybe they go 2-3 in this next 5-game stretch. Just enough to give the fan base some hope to buy back in, but when it matters, I think we all know what's going to happen, and I think we all know what the team ceiling for the 2024 Cowboys is, and that is probably at best a divisional round exit. There was a reason I titled that this is not the Cowboys' year for the 2024 team preview. They are a solid team, and I think they have a high floor, and I think they will get better over the course of the season. I don't think they're going to be a 4-13 team or a 5-12 team, and I think they're much better than what they've showed so far, but the bottom line that I go back to is, does it matter? Are the Cowboys going to go into Detroit and win a playoff game? No. And I think that's going to be the same question and the same answer that we're going to have for this team over the next few years. And again, it goes back to the owner/general manager. It does not help when there's hostility from the top, and that when people don't want to accept accountability for not being able to deliver results. And the Cowboys haven't delivered results in nearly 30 years, and unfortunately, I think that is going to continue. But that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as it helps the channel tremendously, as well as check out Groon. You can get 45% off Groons through the link in the description. Cannot recommend Groons enough. And until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.